Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is an elderberry herbal blend by McNulty's, which is a wonderful tea and coffee place in the West Village in Manhattan. It's been around since I think, let me see, 1895, so technically the Victorian era, even though New York, um, and in a very historical area of Greenwich Village. It is one of the areas where when you wander around, it is kind of like London, especially because with my poor sense of direction and its lack of a grid system, it is very easy to get lost in a wander and enjoy it at the same time. And also, it's not that far from Tea and Sympathy and a couple other Britishy places, so it does feel, on theme with talking about Victober a little bit. And that's what I was thinking when I had a couple of days off this month. And though I may have to rein in my days out because now my cat Freddie has decided, because his name is, after Freddie Mercury, he's got to have dental issues. He's a very high maintenance cat. I love him so much. He's worth it, but oh my goodness. If only he brought in the kind of money that Freddie Mercury would bring in. But anyway, let's not talk about money. That is just so not to be done. But I had a few days off. I kind of hoarded my vacation days early in the year because I didn't have anywhere to go. And now that I can get about a little more, I'm not traveling, I don't believe, for the rest of this year. So I might as well use some time to take fun staycation days. And while the weather's nice especially, I took a nice walk in from the West Village to Alphabet City, which, if you know the area of Manhattan that those places are located in, you know that they're not too far, but they're a bit of a walk. I love walking so much, so it was worthwhile for me. Also, kind of imitating some of my favorite Victorians, because some well-known Victorians were known for being quite the walkers. So yeah. So I thought it was very much, I had also actually gone to Tea and Sympathy. I did not have afternoon tea yet, because I just wanted something else, and it was fantastic. So, some things are just worth changing up a little bit. So yeah, I try to keep a lot of my extra activities to be slightly Victorian, not over the top. I didn't dress Victorian or anything like that. A couple days earlier, I had gone to the New York Public Library, the main branch, if you call it a branch, on 42nd Street in Midtown Manhattan, which is kind of the famous one where you see the two lions in front, Patience and Fortitude, I think. I even got a couple of new bookmarks, which maybe I'll show you another time because I don't feel like talking about it today. But one of the things I did, there was a special exhibition on called the Polanski, I think it was called. I believe that's after a photographer. But there was a collection of things, some of which I'd already seen. I saw a bit of writing from Jane Austen's, like in her own hand, a bit of paper right before her death. And I saw a Gutenberg Bible, which was amazing. Some ancient tablets from, like, I think Babylon, and some kind of recipe book from, I think, the time of Richard II of England. A few other things, but I wanted to mainly, again, focus on something Victorian, so I saw a few of Charles Dickens things. They had a writing desk of his. They had a paper knife made out of his old cat's paw, which is both creepy to me and touching. And a couple other things of his. They had some things from Oscar Wilde that I thought were pretty great, etc. So I have been trying to keep in theme. I know I don't need to, but it just kind of goes with the whole flavor of Victober. So doing that. And of course, this tea, elderberry, is not what you think of, I don't think, when you think of Victorian England. But it is very good for your health, apparently, for your immune system. So, and for one's lungs, which I always need help in. And a bit of discovery between a good wander in the village, finding in Alphabet City another bookshop with a cafe and a kind of bar situation. It was really nice. It was called Book Club. Recommended, I think. I had a really good pumpkin cider, so I also did the whole autumnal thing. Oh, so good. I'm just in love with pumpkin cider so much. And and I love discovering a new bookshop. I went to a bookshop I hadn't been to in years and found part 3 of a collection of Proust that I had been looking for. So maybe now I will finally get to reading Proust, but not yet. Procrastination. So yeah, and then also that library exhibition was fantastic, and I also got to find the what do you call it? The library that's like down the block from this library where you can actually borrow books from, has been completely redone. So I was able to visit their new like Sky Lounge or whatever you want to call it, cafe area where you could sit outside. There is an actual place where you can get tea, coffee. I got lemonade. I don't know why. It was a little cold. I should have just gotten tea. And some pastries and some sandwiches. They were kind of reasonable. And so yeah, good month so far. Reading wise, I have been reading, but I've only finished 2 books. And I don't feel bad about them because they're, decent size, not huge, but decent size Victorian classics. But they've been hits. So I'll talk about them now. Excuse me. I definitely need this tea. So the first one I finished was the one I've been wanting to read. I started it last October, left off because I had overwhelmed myself, and kept saying, why am I not reading it? I know it's not Victober, but come on. So I finally said, I'm going to drop every other book until I read this one. And I did that. And I finished and very much enjoyed North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I think this is my 3rd book of hers. And all the books I've read of hers have been home runs. The last one I read was a while back, that I finished anyway, was Wives and Daughters, which is amazing. Cranford I read earlier, and I enjoyed that very much. And, but North and South, I was like, where have you been all my life? And it was like, on your bookshelf? Hello? I've had this book for over a decade. What's wrong with me? I did see an adaptation many years ago. I'd forgotten a lot of it. I'd forgotten half of the deaths that happen in this book. Spoiler alert, there's a lot of death in this book. Not as depressing as like a Thomas Hardy, but still kind of sad. The difference between this and a lot of other depressing Victorian novels is that there's always this feeling of hope and the romance in it, which takes a while, but is enjoyable. And it's not entirely, it takes a long time for payoff, and I don't want to say any more, but still, it doesn't feel tragic to me. But what I loved about it was, okay, the contrast between, I guess, really the north of England and the south of England is because the main character, Margaret Hale, because of circumstances, has to move with her parents to the north of England, whereas she before didn't really know much about this area, to a fictional town that is probably Manchester. And it's very industrial, a lot of factory type places, and she meets a man who owns this business, and he's really, successful, basically, at the time, named Mr. Thornton. And he is fantastic. Hold on. Another cough. What can I say? And a lot of people compare this book to Pride and Prejudice. I understand it because their first impressions of each other are a little bit off, which is basically what happens to Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice. But otherwise, honestly, the differences kind of end there. And yet it is, to me, very close to me in terms of successful, as far as, just a different background. More industrial revolution and less, sitting in drawing rooms and taking a turn about the room for exercise. And, oh, heaven forbid you should walk 3 miles and get mud on your shoes. Woohoo! And your skirt. Oh! But there are questions of propriety and everything in this book as well. But I think a lot of things almost get tossed out the window while Margaret Hale is living in the north because things are just so different. So Margaret comes across a little bit, I think, standoffish and maybe snobby, but she does take an interest in the local people there and people who are dealing with illness as a result of some of their labors and just general sickness. The environment does seem to be a bit of a rough environment, though. And, excuse me, Mr. Thornton comes across to Margaret Hale as a bit not a nice person, maybe too focused on industry. But his whole reason for really coming to know the Hale family is to learn more about classical literature from her father. So he is actually taking a little bit of an interest in more than just, making money. So it's a little bit of bad impressions, but also getting to know each other and getting to see nuances about each character. There's a wonderful scene. I don't know if I'm going to take the time to read it out loud, but there's a wonderful scene where there's a dinner party that Margaret goes to, and there's a whole paragraph wherein Mr. Thornton is observing her at this party, and she is seeing how he's interacting with other people. And to me, it is such a turning point in their relationship, even though they may not realize it. The way they thought about each other is slightly, coming under the corrections of, well, maybe I misjudged this person. And man, I can't stop having my eye on this person, even though I don't have a great thought of it. Anyway, there's a lot more that happens in the book, and I don't want to give away spoilers, but it is, I thought, a pretty amazing book. It does take a lot of the common ways of the period and question them, and yet stick to a lot of things that are proper as well. It's a really great balance in that way, and just a really well-told story. The language is great. I think Elizabeth Gaskell is one of my favorites in terms of the way she writes, because she doesn't write, she doesn't dumb down her writing, but it's a little less of a need to just grab a dictionary every 5 seconds, like Charlotte Bronte, who I love, but still, lady, I mean, come on. There is a little bit of the writing in the local vernacular, which I sometimes find annoying, but it wasn't quite as much for me of a taxing situation as Wuthering Heights had been in that respect. But I would say this is probably one of my top books of the year. Most certainly. So, then I also read a book by an author I had never read before, so now I feel like I've hit a couple of goals, A book that, continues my enjoyment of a certain writer, which I knew it would. I just knew it would. I don't know why it took me so long. It's kind of like Jane Eyre. It took me so long, and then I ended up loving it. Maybe I just don't like to do what is popular. I don't know. No, I'm not like that. I'm not a hipster. But anyway, but this is a new writer for me. New for me. I've heard about her before on BookTube, mostly, but this is Mary Elizabeth Braddon. I read Lady Audley's Secret, and Catherine's secret is that I own a number of these Oxford World's Classics, and of course I've read library books. I've checked out books from the library that were Oxford World's Classics, and I have a number of them. You can't see them today, but they're off to the side over here. There's a chunk of them that I have. This is the first one that I actually finished a novel from cover to cover, because I have a couple of poetry collections that I read from them. I don't really count that. But that's weird. I cannot believe it's taken me this long, because I have acquired some of these books over time. This book I got close to when COVID started really happening. I bought it at a thrift store, and there's some things I don't like about it, like whoever owned this wrote in it, and not in a good annotation way, but in a very bad handwriting, but they didn't do it too much in the book, so it's not so bad. And they wrote a list in the back, which is confusing. It looks like it says TBC, developer, headphones with a question mark, jam, and booze. Interesting. I don't know. But this is what they called the sensation novel, so this goes with one of the prompts for the Victober month, and I'm very happy about that, because I always like the idea of sensation novels. And I've read some that are considered sensation novels, but excuse me for making that noise, but this is a sensational tea. Sensational. I always like the ones that come out kind of like this deep, almost wine color. So I don't want to show it without spilling it. Still to figure out how to do that, because I should be able to show you more of my teas on camera. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, sensation novels. And I don't think this is my go-to genre, but it's kind of nice to throw it in a little bit. And I liked Mary Elizabeth Braddon's writing style, also not too intimidating. One of the reasons I said, how has this book not been in my life before? is because there is a lot of talk about, for instance, there's a portrait of Lady Audley, my lady, as they call her sometimes, that is done in the Pre-Raphaelite style. And there's a lot of talk about Pre-Raphaelitism, Pre-Raphaelites. Not as much as some books, but this, I'm like, wow. My whole project about learning more and about the Pre-Raphaelites and their influences and their inspirations, etc. And I think, my sister read this not too long ago. She might have mentioned that to me. So, but now it really brought it home. So this book is a sensation novel. You don't know what's going to happen next. Little suspenseful, and there is a character. Lady Audley is, I think she was a governess or something, and Sir Audley, I think is whatever he's called. Well, I forgot his first name. I think it was Michael. Very rich person, lives in a very big place and has a grown daughter, who, he's been a widower for a long time. Sees her, she's astoundingly beautiful, and falls in love, marries her, but she's got secrets. And his nephew, Audley's nephew, is a guy who he's a barrister. He's lived a pretty easy, simple life. He just lets things happen. He's just a nice kind of guy. He likes to read French novels and smoke and, kind of chill person. Doesn't sound like the worst person. But he reunites with an old friend, and they go up to visit the Audleys, and his friend disappears under very mysterious circumstances. So now, this guy, who's not like a ne'er-do-well or anything, but just kind of like I said, a chill dude, suddenly is like, this has to do with Lady Audley. I know that, and I need to discover what happened to my friend, and what is her secret? What is her background? So he actually investigates. So this is not just a novel. Hold on. It's a mystery. It's been so long since I've had the hat on the video. So it's a little bit of a tea and mystery situation for me. I mean, it's not, I don't think you'll find this in the mystery sections of bookshops, but to me, this is an investigation, not by an actual detective, but he does refer to detective work a little bit, and it does follow some of the feelings of like Edgar Allan Poe themes, I would say. And he thinks a lot while he's smoking, so he has something in common with Sherlock Holmes a little bit earlier. This book was written, I think, in the early 1860s. It makes a reference to the difficulties happening in the American South, which is interesting to me. So, like the early Civil War period. And this, I believe, is the time period where I read and enjoyed almost the most amount of Victorian novels. And I don't know what it was. Even though there's a lot of time periods that I enjoy in the Victorian period, great novels, etc., I think there's something about the late 50s and early 60s in Victorian England, I don't know, in Britain, that was just amazing. And then there are certain gaps, at least for my own reading, that I need to read more of a later Victorian period. There are years that I don't think I've read anything from. I have to start reading Stevenson. But until then, this was a well-written story, sometimes a little overdramatic, fainting happening a little too often. But you know what? I cannot judge fainting because I have fainted before, more than once, from things that probably shouldn't have made me faint. So, who am I? I guess I am a Victorian lady. So yeah, it doesn't get solved the way a typical detective novel will be solved, but it is still close to a mystery. So I really did enjoy this. And it's a little hot in here today. So enough about tea and mystery. Do I have a hat head? I really do love the painting. It's from, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Lord Leighton. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I know he had made some paintings that are considered Pre-Raphaelite as well. He wasn't like a main one, so that also is pretty amazing. And I just really do like this painting very much. It does look like how I imagined Lady Audley to look. She was a little blonder, I think. This one looks a little bit more gingery. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. But very well written, and I'm going to read something out of it that doesn't really have anything to do with the plot, but has everything to do with me. And it might say something that will maybe have to do do something with the plot. And I'm probably going to mispronounce a word because this word bohia, I never know if I'm pronouncing it bohia, but bohia is a T that I don't know the pronunciation of. How dare. But I'm going to read it anyway. Lucy Audley looked up from her occupation amongst the fragile china cups and watched Robert rather anxiously as he walked softly to his uncle's room and back again to the boudoir. She looked very pretty and innocent, seated behind the graceful group of delicate opal china and glittering silver. Surely a pretty woman never looks prettier than when making tea. The most feminine and most domestic of all occupations imparts a magic harmony to her every movement, a witchery to her every glance. The floating mists from the boiling liquid in which she infuses the soothing herbs, whose secrets are known to her alone, envelop her in a cloud of scented vapor, through which she seems a social fairy, weaving potent spells with gunpowder and bohia. Gunpowder is a type of tea, by the way. At the, sounds like a Killer Queen song, Freddie Mercury. At the tea table, she reigns omnipotent, unapproachable. What do men know of the mysterious beverage? Read how poor Hazlitt made his tea, and shudder at the dreadful barbarism. How clumsily the wretched creatures attempt to assist the witch president of the tea tray. How hopelessly they hold the kettle. How continually they imperil the frail cups and saucers, or the taper hands of the priestess. To do away with the tea table is to rob woman of her legitimate empire. To send a couple of hulking men about amongst your visitors, distributing a mixture made in the housekeeper's room, is to reduce the most social and friendly of ceremonies to a formal giving out of rations. Okay, I think that's probably enough for now. So, yeah, it's a little bit, confining, this is what men don't, men shouldn't make tea or something, I don't know. But it's written by a woman, so I'll let her get away with it. It's supposed to be a man's perspective, but I just thought, I actually think I was reading those lines when I was on the subway going home, and I was like, oh, tea and Pre-Raphaelite. So great story. Not quite as good to me as North and South, but still a really enjoyable book. A lot of discussion about what beauty does, like what kind of places can you enter, as a result of your beauty, as opposed to someone who's plain. What kind of, opportunities are available to a beautiful person, especially in this case, a woman. But I'm sure, again, Oscar Wilde might have found that interesting too. I've got to see if he's written anything about her. Probably. So I thought this was a great couple of weeks of reading, even though I've only read 2. I am a quarter of the way through. Where is it? Right here. A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I'm actually reading Dickens again, and I'm enjoying it so far. I am not blown away by it, but I'm still in the early parts of it, and I like it. I really like it. I really enjoy this. Comes with the actual illustrations that it comes from. Congratulations. So I'm happy about that. This was I think it's a little crumbly actually for a pretty volume. It's a little crumbly, but it was a 100th anniversary edition, so it's probably came out in the 60s or so, or the 50s. I don't know. It's something related to Oxford as well. So yeah, it's been a good month. I've read other things too, but they're not books, and I've not actually read the poetry I plan to read yet, so we'll see if I can get to that. But yeah, I hope you guys, if you're participating in Victober, I hope you're enjoying it. If not, I hope you're enjoying anything you're reading, or if you're watching an adaptation of something Victorian as well. That's great too. So let me know down below if you've, something weird happening back there. Oh, you know what it is? It's my cat on the, my cat Janie's on this rocking chair that definitely needs WD-40, but it makes a squeaky noise when she's just sitting there licking herself. It's cute though. Anyway, enough about distractions. Yes, so if you have any books that you particularly are excited about this month, let me know in the comments below. So that's all for now. Have a happy rest of Victober, and this is Catherine, Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and book-filled day.